Hello friends, this is Hank, your pajama scholar, with an AGR at 144. Now today is kind of an important AGR. I'm going to get right to the point. And then I suppose we'll meander around a little bit with the typical asides. All right. The first, I'm going to address a few different things. First, I'm going to remind everyone about a little recent history regarding Beirut, and we're going to examine that. Secondly, we're going to examine, and this would partially be tied in, segue from the first piece, about powers that could be potentially interested in World War III and how they would go about it and why I consider it to be a fool's errand and absurd. And thirdly, I will explain how we avert World War III by giving the powers that be exactly what they want. Power, control, a minimal upset with a maximum amount of return, an absolution of their own debts, and a greater ability to wield power. And this is not only for the benefit of America, it's for the benefit of many countries, especially the great powers of the world. And when I speak of the great powers of the world, I mean the great powers of the world. If you need me to be more clear, just to start with, they would include the members of the Security Council of the United Nations. And this would be something I believe everyone would be pleased with. And even nations that are not members of the UN Security Council, I suspect, would be pleased. And I know I start a bit enigmatic, and we've got a long way to go before I get from where we are from now to there, but I will explain. And also, I'll go over a few things, some protocols that were established. I'll bring some things to light that you may not be aware of if you were not a conspiracy theorist. Some of us have been at this much longer than people that are new to the culture of conspiracy. Conspiracy is only a group of individuals that have gotten together and discussed a plan and move forward to execute that plan. There was, at one time, a French revolutionary known, I believe his name was La Rochefoucauld. He said things like, men whose minds are consumed with small things are unable or incapable of thinking big. He also realized that to be successful in moving any revolution forward, it would be presenting options to those entities that are stronger than you, and just showing them the wisdom of what perhaps they had not yet creatively conceived, because they didn't have the necessity to creatively conceive. The world understands we need change, and you will have two forces essentially that are opposing each other. But these forces consist of many different factions with many different ideologies. Ultimately, my concern is for the liberalism, the freedom, the virtues of the Enlightenment that were perceived by our founding fathers, achieved through a long journey of Western philosophy, to ensure the rights of man, to be free, to recognize God, to be free, to maximize your creative potential, to be secure in your belongings, to know that you have the ability to defend yourself, and the freedom to speak and think, to live, so you can fully actualize. Because life is a journey. It is but a vapor. It's over quicker than you think, and quicker for some than others. There was a time in my life I had heard of God. I remember my great-grandparents and my grandparents and my parents would speak of God. And when I was a child, I said things like, and I don't even want to say it now because it's not in my spirit, like, damn it. Now, that in and of itself may be excusable. I don't consider that to be the world's greatest blasphemy. But knowing the awesome power of God, I'll say other things like fuck and pussy. I'll even get blind drunk and use racial epithets, whatever, the most incendiary shit that I can come up with. But I did not recognize the reality of God. I've prayed for things in my life, and they've come true. God chose to spare my life. Several times. Once I was condemned to die on Christmas Day. I was told that I had pancreatic cancer. It was Christmas Eve. I was told that it was probable I had pancreatic cancer and I would die. I couldn't eat because my stomach had basically scarred shut. So anything I would eat, I would vomit up. So it was about 3 months I had spent until I was down to about 120 pounds of not being able to eat. And I remember being so weak, lying on the floor, laying on my back, looking up at a stained glass lamp, alone, and 2 pictures of the Virgin Mary. And when I went in on Christmas Eve, the doctor said, "You can go back to your family tonight, but you will come back tomorrow. And when you leave from here, you cannot eat." And I went to spend time with my family. And I didn't say anything because what was there to say? I mean, they could see that I was weak. They could see that I was sick. I was exhausted. I just sat in a chair and watched. I was happy to be there. And I prayed that I would survive. And it was an enormously painful experience. I ended up having to go through a surgery where they missed the epidural. And I assure you, a gut wound without anesthetic is a painful wound. Now let me not be so dark. I did survive. But it did kind of change my perspective. And even still, I had not yet even fully begun to recognize God, even though my prayers had been answered. You would think I would immediately go to the most pious life. Well, I did change my ways. Because my body and nature would accept no less. And the discomfort is enough of a deterrent. But it was this time after I had come to realize fully the direction, the path in which we were headed. I'd done many things, gone around in inspections, so I could understand the building process. Things that are buried beneath the ground, I can see. I learned about the soil, learned about the earth. Learned about masonry, I learned about construction. I learned about housing bubbles, and I know what houses are made out of. A little wood, drywall, PVC pipe, maybe a little copper, concrete, some glass, some compacted earth, cinder block maybe, grout, electrical wire, nothing expensive. A couple of coats of paint. So I learned about the value because I learned about the cost. I learned what it was. I went into the insurance business, so I was able to go around and I learned about people's finances. I learned about the condition of their finances, so I understood the condition of many people. And the sincerity with which they wanted what I wanted to sell them. They couldn't afford. The people that needed, I found the people that needed and wanted the help the most could not get it. Even though it would have been better for all of us, they've been able to have it. And when I was at the Bronze Forge, I learned about art. I learned what it was to sweat. I learned what it was to be among men, having come out of a depression after a friend had committed suicide, who had just gotten his medical degree. I mean, he had just become a doctor, shot himself on Easter right after I talked to him. I mean, blew his head off with a shotgun. So, I was depressed for a time. And he was a man of God. Tragic accident. But I learned what it was to shovel sand. I remember the first time I tried to pick up a bronze ingot, and it was so heavy, I thought it was rooted to the earth. I thought it was impossible to pick it up because I did not have the strength to pick it up. Like, it may as well have been rooted to the earth for all the effort. And I remember there, that first day, filling buckets of sand. My body was aching and my muscles. Like, the whole part of me was, the physical part of me was screaming to quit. And with every movement, kept repeating in my mind, they will not break me. 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 And I filled those buckets. And I came back. And I did it again and again and again. And I gave it my best effort every single day. And in time, I was able to lift ingots with my fingertips. Each hand. So I learned about the value. I learned about how difficult it is to work in the heat of a forge with fairly Egyptian methods to produce the highest quality art from molten metal, something that will endure the test of time, and yet not being able to earn as much as I had earned when I was 15 working at a bookstore. And this was no fault of my employers, who were generous, as all of them have been. It was simply the condition of the overinflated property and just not enough money velocity, not enough appreciation for art. Realizing that, there's only certain type of people that can commission to have art done. And metalworking, bronze smithing, to be working a bronze forge, to craft high quality art, statues that are larger than life. There's only a certain group of people that can afford these types of things. And I realized that I could not continue on that path because I had no insurances. There was one day that there was a cast that we had been working on for a very long time, and I could feel, as I was holding this cast, like my back crushing, and I was losing the feeling in my toes, which is still not totally returned to this day. But I would not drop that cast, and I realized I could not continue along this way because if I were to injure myself, I lose my health. I have no future. So I must move on now and realize a different way. I must warn people of what is to come unless we become aware and cooperate and intervene. So, that just to begin with. This very well might be a long AGR. Now I want to talk about the Beirut blast. So to do this, let's see if I can find a clip and pull it, and let's re-examine the explosion. See if I can actually find a decent clip. There's one from a window that I particularly like. But there's also one from the water, because from the water you can actually run some calculations because you're at sea level. So let's see what we've got here.
جوزك عم يطلع انفجارات على البور. يلا باي. البور بعده لهلا يا ويلاه. اوه ماي جاد. الله اكبر. عمل ذره هيدي. يا صورت بعده لهلا يا ويلاه. اوه ماي جاد. الله اكبر. عمل ذره هيدي. يا صورت
Now, I believe that you can roughly calculate, because you would be able to determine the approximate distance that vessel was from the shoreline based on the, I mean, you've got the height of the building. So, and then you've got the boat, so that's two pieces that you can use. And essentially you could use a little bit of trigonometry to figure out the distance. And then you have the explosion, and then you also have the sound, the sonic boom. So at sea level you should be able to calculate fairly accurately but that's not really the point of this one. There, you also have a little bit. You have a little bit of a temperature. Basically, what I would do is try and determine the pressure, and that would give me an indication of what type of explosive was used. I do not believe that this was an ampho bomb. I believe it was a thermobaric weapon. Let's see if we can get a few more clips here. It's best, the one, it's probably best is the one that's from the window. Here we are. Well, this is a window. Let's take a look.
I'm good, I'm good.
What is it?
I'm here.
Okay. I had taken some notes a while back. I'd actually done these calculations a little bit ago. There was some more to it than just distance. Sound moves at 343 meters a second near the time index. That's pretty much it to calculate distance. That's probably a fuck ton easier. So, yeah. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Let's see, this would have been a long time ago. It might not even be in this book anymore. It might have been a different book, actually. I'd have to find. Yeah, it's likely to be in an earlier book. So I remember I was doing some calculations as far as the pressure goes. Anyway, I think we can all be fairly reasonably certain that it was not an info bomb. It wasn't just a careless where they had carelessly stacked some fertilizer there, and well, it just happened to blow up the whole friggin' port. Now let's I'll open Google Earth, and we can examine the location, because I want to talk about, you know, this maxim, this cui bono thing. You know, who benefits, who doesn't benefit. You know, why the why. The question's in the why. The answer is in the why. Let's change the screen here. All right. So, here we are in Lebanon, Beirut. This is where the blast took place. Now, for the whole of Lebanon, here to here, there are some familiar names. And these are from previous world wars, not only World War I, but World War II. Tripoli. Why? These ports. The port here at Beirut. Okay. Tyre being a much smaller port, but still, this was like probably, one of those ports of the old, back, a long time ago, but the bigger being Tripoli and Beirut. Now, back in the day, they were French holdings, and still in Tripoli and in Beirut, there's a large, I guess, I wouldn't necessarily call it an affinity, but perhaps maybe it would be best described as a cultural, like, part of a cultural heritage. How French colonialism is somewhat infused into the culture in Lebanon. So I thought perhaps at first it was the French. But then I asked myself, why? Because shortly after the blast, the French sent a fleet into the Mediterranean, and I believe Macron himself went to Beirut with a retinue of security, and the French presence was very much unwelcome, it would seem. And I didn't believe that the French had any designs on financing reconstruction of this port. And then I asked myself, what would the French have to gain by blowing up Beirut? And why would they do it with a thermobaric weapon? So it kind of ruled them out. They went there probably to figure out what in the hell was going on. Now, some of the first people on the ground were the Russians. The Russians have what I believe the United States should be working on. If anybody could grow a brain, is that the Russians have like an environmental sort of cleanup team, an environmental cleanup crew or whatever, disaster relief, disaster mitigation, stuff like that. And instead of, that George Bush bullshit like in Haiti when they had that massive earthquake down there, and Bush was like, yeah, don't worry about it, just send money to us. Just go ahead and send a check, and we'll take care of it. And then you've got these fucking doctors down there, literally. I believe there was a CNN reporter, I think, that was there was a box of corneas where these savage surgeons had gone down there, essentially, because corneas are worth quite a bit. Not only for research purposes primarily, but also probably as implants or transplants. So here they are, these butchers taking the dead or the dying, slicing them up, and the reporter just happens to stumble on the box that says corneas in it, and they're going, see, we're getting all kinds of medical aid, and we even need more corneas. Not really realizing what precisely that I believe she was looking at. I mean, the Russians are a little bit more earnest, or they would at least appear to be a little bit more earnest in their honesty about disaster relief. Now, imagine what type of relationship America could be enjoying with Haiti had we actually applied the resources that the American people charitably and earnestly wanted to give the Haitian people to help restore them. All that money was soaked up and stolen by these fucking criminals. And butchers. It compromises our security overall, but I'm getting away from from the point here. I'm just saying that we Americans, we should have something like something that's like a nuclear radiation type of cleanup thing, like Fukushima, for example. I believe there was an admiral in the Pacific Fleet that wanted to immediately take the fleet out and assist the Japanese in disaster mitigation, to help, when that radioactive plume swept across the Pacific Ocean and into Canada and all into the West Coast, and cesium is now in your Napa Valley wine because dipshit Obama decided to fucking sweep it under the rug instead of being... I mean, what did he have to lose by being honest with the people about it? Stay out of the fucking rain for a day or two. While this cloud... There's been a disaster in the world. Stay out of the rain for a couple of days. We've gone to assist. The Japanese are our allies. The Pacific Fleet is on its way. We're out there to help as best we can. Keep that China syndrome stuff from going on, where the reactors melt all the way down into the core of the Earth through the water table and continue to pollute the Pacific Ocean, fucking everything up. Now, why did Fukushima explode? I know I'm getting away from it, but I'm still staying with it because there's a lot of pieces to connect here. And getting a picture of the big idea requires connecting the dots. When we think of Japan and we think of their nuclear reactors, it's not necessarily about powering Japan. A nuclear power plant serves two functions. One, it can produce power, but really the power that it produces was kind of an afterthought, where the Nuclear Energy Commission, or it used to be the Atomic Energy Commission, but they got sued so many times they had to change their name. So I think it's now like, I don't know. It would fall under the jurisdiction of the Department of Energy, but I don't know what they've renamed it now. Anyway, that's not even really that important. If you get my point, I'm just saying that, well, the afterthought where nuclear power plants produce energy was not the original design. The original design, like, that's why everybody in the world is always watching when somebody builds a nuclear power plant, because they can quickly be used to create nuclear weapons. And we consider the Japanese to be what you'd call a turnkey nuclear power. I mean, they flip that switch and, buddy, they are ready to go with nuclear weapons. And having had nuclear weapons used on them, I suspect they would be most likely to use nuclear weapons on someone else. Which is why that makes it such a delicate situation in that part of the world. But let's get back to Beirut before we get on to the geopolitical dynamics of Asia. Because I want to try and maybe piece together, because if we can solve the mystery behind who was responsible for blowing up Beirut with a thermobaric weapon, I believe we will be well on our way to figuring out a lot of things. It would be the first question that, if a reasonable answer could be found, would lead in the right direction. So I don't think it was the French. And then I thought perhaps Israel was responsible. Lebanon has always been a thorn in the side of Israel. I mean, the and when I speak of Israel, I'm not speaking of the people of Israel. I'll pull another clip to make this clear, because it's a very important distinction to make in this day and age. Who is responsible for what? And as we've entered this New World Order, or we've been in the New World Order, and the New World Order is fighting to survive or do something else completely fucking heinous, it's best we be mindful. So let's pull, I'm going to pull something here that should make it a little bit more clear, the situation in Israel. Here we go. Now this is a whole lot of Orthodox Jews attending the funeral of a rabbi in defiance of the state. Okay, so it would appear that we have in Israel Orthodox Jews attending a funeral of a rabbi, being rounded up by people wearing badges, agents of the state. In Israel. Now, to me, that reminds me of another group that wore badges, or swastikas rather, working for a state, rounding up Jews, and I call them Nazis. Now, what the fuck are Nazis doing in Israel? When I think of the Mossad after World War II went and hunted down those Nazi fucking bastards and killed them. Those war criminals that thought they could get away? No, no, no. The Mossad hunted them down and killed them. So I wonder about the Mossad today. Why in the fuck are they working for Nazis? I saw something very interesting from Netanyahu the other day. The arrogance of that pig-headed piece of shit. Fucking bastard. Let's see if I can find that one. He's an asshole. Takes it to a whole new level, and I forget where I saw it, so it might be difficult to find. But he was given some speech to a group of business interests, I believe, in Germany. Jewish business interests, if I recall correctly. But I can't remember precisely where I saw this conversation take place. It wasn't that long ago, the why and the when, but this is important because we're going to figure this out here. Let's just try and find a and I'll just limit the time here to something like within the past couple of weeks. All right, I'll just do a little screen share here. That way, you can see what I'm seeing as I'm trying to search for it. Yes, here it was, World Economic Forum, I believe. Let's take a look.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, this is it. This is absolutely it. This is going to take some time. Like I said, today might be a longer day for AGR. My ears are ringing. Let me get a drink. Let me see if I can pull the piece in like one of its most important places and then go from there.
A lot, fast.
I'll just let it run for a second while I get a drink. Because I fucking need one when I gotta watch this horse shit.
Didn't quibble about the price. I personally got involved in it. And I said just basically to the bureaucrats, cut the whatever. I want to be diplomatic, so cut the nonsense.
Please feel free to share with us very candidly. So,
well, cut the C word in English or any other word that you want. I mean, this is ridiculous. You know, you'll pay a few more dollars per dose now, and tomorrow everybody will be paying 10 times that much. So number one, that. Number two, the legal people. I actually was on the phone with the president of, with the CEO of Pfizer, Albert Bourla. I think at 2 o'clock in the morning, he put his legal advisor on, I put our legal advisor on, and we crashed it. So you need personal leadership to move it. And basically the selling point was a real one, turns out to be true, that Israel could serve as a world laboratory for it to be true, that Israel could serve as a world laboratory.
All right, I'm back. So I'm going to try and get right to the point of where it is in here. He's speaking to this guy. I'll screen share in just a moment.
The race between mutation and vaccination.
well, thank you so much, Prime Minister. We know that we have limited time, so I wanted to go first to Stefan Ushman, Chair and of the Executive Board and CEO of Merck. Stefan, are you with us? I think you're ready for asking a question to the Prime Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Israel has such a vibrant innovation ecosystem, and I wanted to ask you a question that goes beyond the pandemic. My company, Merck, has been in Israel for more than 50 years. We're working closely with many institutions, you know, like our friends at the Weizmann Institute or Hebrew University are like family members to us, and we have R&D centers in different businesses, in biopharma, in life science.
Now I'm going to interject before I lose my fucking mind. How did the Jews become the fucking Nazis?
In electronic materials, Israel has, as I said, such a vibrant scene. You have more PhDs per capita than anywhere else. You have this incredible innovation network. You have high-ranking government officials rolling out a very clear policy, and we have so many things to tackle through science and technology within this pandemic and beyond the pandemic. I had the chance to discuss these topics with you together with Chancellor Merkel. Could you tell us what would be your advice to other nations? How can we use science and technology to tackle these problems and do the right thing for our countries? What can we learn?
Watching this guy blow Netanyahu. I mean, why don't you just suck his fucking cock? But this is not the most important part here. The most important part here is when we get to the whole intelligence aspect that pisses everybody off. Yes, Lazar, you know what? That is exactly right. Maybe that is what happened. The abused become the abuser. That is prescient. That is prescient. Wow, you really might have hit it dead on there. I'm going to go back to screen share here.
Invest a huge amount of our national resources on and maintaining effective intelligence. Israel's a small country, but it has a giant head. Giant. I mean, its collection agencies are in the West probably number 2 in size, absolute size. It's not the NSA, but it's not 1/40th of the NSA. That's our relative size compared to the United States. So that's an investment that goes annually all the time. And it produces people who coast the information networks, who develop algorithms, who are in all sorts of adjacent technologies.
So what is this smug son of a bitch actually saying? We've got all the politicians over a fucking barrel somehow. Yeah, well, fuck you, buddy. I don't give a shit how fucking bought those sons of bitches are. I don't give a fuck. In this day and age, you can make it up. Lie about whatever the fuck you want to. What good is your intelligence if you're just if they can fucking deep fake Edward Snowden? I mean, how long has that son of a bitch been dead? Who the fuck knows? Edward Snowden is literally a fucking deep fake. All right, let's get on to their intelligence gathering capabilities of the Mossad that once hunted down Nazis and now have become them. And I'll get even on to the point of the fucking Burisma thing, literally cooperating with not just metaphorical, perhaps in your mind, looking like a fascist Nazi, but the Nazis that literally live in the Ukraine, the neo-Nazis, that are proudly fucking Nazi, the remnants of the Nazis. Budding. Now, how in the hell can the Jews fucking work with the fucking Nazis in the Ukraine? I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. But the abused become the abuser. That's true. But we'll talk a little bit too about the professional hits in the Ukraine. We're gonna get from here to there, but it's all related. Like I say, there's a key. There's always a key, and that key is who was behind that thermobaric blast in Beirut. And I will eventually conclude, or I'm moving to the conclusion that I do not believe that Israel was responsible, but all of this information is important to put together the pieces of the puzzle. So let's get on and watch this smug son of a bitch get on with his fucking... I get frustrated. That's why I drink. Well, I'd be a liar. It's not the only reason I drink. I love to drink. It's good for me, at least. Sometimes. Anyway.
And we take our best brain power to do that. We literally canvass the whole country, and we put our finest brains in these disciplines, these and other disciplines. So that's sunk cost. It won't go very far unless these people can, when they leave the military or the Mossad or wherever, they can start their businesses. And if they find a web of bureaucracy and ridiculously high taxes, which Israel had for years, they'll go elsewhere. Like my brother-in-law was a pilot and a very gifted a high-tech guy who went to California and worked for this small company called Intel, But his son is one of the great, he's a young guy. He's in Israel now because the environment changed. We changed the environment. We made it a very pro-business environment. We just submitted to the Knesset the last one, which is absurd that we didn't have it. But Israeli insurance funds and pension funds could not invest. Angel investment in high tech was not possible. We just changed that. So everything you saw is still carrying a burden of bureaucracy, and that's our growth opportunity is our bureaucracy. Everything.
Now, could that be any more crystal clear? Now, if you believe in race, and race is a real thing, because, well, fuck. Humans breed dogs. A Labrador is very different than a friggin' Keys Hound. Sorry to say. If you are one of those people that believe in science, because it's kind of fucking real. Scientism is not the answer, but there is a little something to the properties of the material world in which we live. And there are racial attributes that we have. Like, for example, Asians can very rarely ever tolerate milk, cheese, or alcohol. White people, generally, can tolerate milk, cheese, and alcohol. Asians simply don't have the enzyme to process it. Call it Asian flush. And my lineage is mostly German. But from my grandmother's side, we are Greek or from the Greek Jews. That's a fucking fact. So I might be more Jewish in blood than Netanyahu, but I'm not Jewish in my tradition of spirituality. I am a Christian. I believe on the blood of Jesus Christ. I believe God made manifest Son of God, the Son of God, to the Lamb of God, to give the blood sacrifice that is required to pierce the veil, that forgiveness, where Christianity evolves from the spirit of the law, whereas previously it was of Moses and of Noah, where it was laws, commandments that were interpreted, whereas Jesus taught and still teaches in the Holy Spirit the lessons that are understood only through the Holy Spirit, and demonstrates all the areas that are, I wouldn't say gray, but where they cannot be codified. In the Holy Spirit, it cannot be codified. There are so many things in the Spirit that is of God that cannot even be written, and sometimes not even be properly expressed. It is something that you know and you live when you believe, when you learn. I started this AG off speaking about how I have come to realize God. And you will find I will return there many times, because it's crucial. But let's not get too terribly far away from this discovery that we're trying to make now. But it should be crystal clear now, the arrogance of how the Mossad, how Israel has lost its way, which is truly one of the saddest reflections I think that we could possibly have. That for all those Jews that died at the hands of the Nazis, to betray them in their own word, in their own nation, with the very intelligence agency that was designed to hunt down those Nazi war criminals and kill them. I do not call for violence. It's Old Testament. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And those Nazi war criminals deserve what they fucking got. So prescient, though, Lazar has said today in the chat. The abused become the abuser. The most evil among us are the most defeated. Jesus knew that, but still loved them the same. Well, this will lead me on to the next point of why I do not believe Israel was responsible for the Beirut thermobaric blast, or the explosion there in Beirut. Because on Christmas, Netanyahu gave a message to the West. Merry Christmas. We appreciate you Christians that support Israel. The same Christmas day that Israel sends bombers over a bombing run into Syria, which is a secular nation, but does have many Christians there in it, and bombing them on Christmas Day. Even World War I, where there was trench warfare, on Christmas Day, the soldiers set aside their weapons and they sung. There was peace on Christmas Day in the trenches of World War I. And this fucking bastard here has got the balls to wish us a Merry Christmas and then bomb a fucking Christian nation. Now, sure, the Mossad would probably watch this video. Well, here's my message to you. Unfuck your own situation. Stop being the evil that you were designed to live, to defeat. You have become the enemy. And that, if you are Jewish, you would know the law. If you believe in God, then you believe in hell. And this life is but a vapor. So why can I be so bold? Am I afraid of them? Sure, they could torture me. Sure. I live in a place that's got some Zionists in it. Every fucking place does. For the most part, we don't terribly disagree on many things. Well, let me rephrase that. What is good for our community, we set aside our opinions of the world. Like, when you have a greater perspective. You don't really give a rat's ass about what anybody fucking thinks about what's beyond your reach. And so what are we going to do? Shoot at each other? No, I've known too many good Jews. I've known too many of American Jews of peace. Like, to be a Christian, you have to know that we come, our roots are in the Jewish people. And I myself have Jewish blood. But the blood is not important. I mean, it has been said that, well, the blood is important, but in an entirely different sense. It's you cannot have a present without having a past, and you cannot have a future without knowing the past. Whether we be Christian or Jewish or Muslim, I believe we are all brothers under the same God. Now, many people would disagree with this because they would rather find something to disagree on than simply understanding that we all live under God, and God is real. We don't have a different God, we have one God. Like, I believe I heard Dangerfield or something say the other day about Buddhism. Like, Buddha didn't want to create Buddhists, like, that would venerate or worship him. And I don't know that much about Buddhism, so I suppose he'll have to explain it to us if he knows anything about it. He knows quite a great deal about many things. But let's continue on this tack where we're still trying to figure out who blew up Beirut. Now, why do I not believe that it's Israel? Okay, now we've just heard from the horse's mouth, the horse's ass himself, that their power, their strength relies on controlling or manipulating blackmail or intelligence gathering operations against bureaucracies wherever they exist. That is their strength. Their strength essentially relies, being such a small strip of land, on that level of subversion to be able to get the weapons that they would need to defend themselves against a bunch of pissed off Arabs. Now, when we speak of race, Arabs, you don't want to piss off an Arab, all right? The thing about them is it's fucking blood. It is blood for blood. They're still about Hammurabi's code, an eye for an eye. I mean, they'll murk you at a friggin' wedding. Because they don't forgive and forget. Their shit is about blood feud for friggin' ever. I mean, I believe in the eyes of many Arabs that, especially the ones deep inside the caliphate, they would still be at war with Christianity for the Crusades. Like, a feud against an Arab is a blood feud forever until one lives and the other dies. And let's be real, 2/3 of the world is Muslim. And then we've got in the West a bunch of atheists who don't even fucking get it, that have no sense of spirituality, that have no sense of God. that only believe, hey, I'm a good person. I'm a good person, and when I die, nothing happens. When I die, I just rot in the ground. Like, I have no soul. An atheist has loudly proclaims to the world, I have no soul. I'm just a moving bag of meat. And when you believe such a thing, you treat yourself as such a thing. You degrade yourself by not recognizing your own soul. And a man that has no soul has already sold it, and he sold it cheaply. He sold it for nothing. When a soul is such a precious gift. So the West is infested with atheists or agnostics who just simply don't care. Oh, there might be a God. We'll fucking figure it out when we die. We'll figure it out later. Or maybe in the last minute of my life, I'll recognize God, and then I'll be forgiven for everything. It'll be real easy. At that last second, I'll be a believer, and wham bam, thank you, ma'am. I'll go right to heaven because I was a good person. I can tell you, honestly, that spirituality and prayer is a difficult daily journey, a difficult daily practice. You have to practice it. You must be mindful of God with every sip of water or of beer that you take, of every bite of food that goes in your mouth, of every breath of air, of every bird in the sky. It keeps the evil from your eyes. And you begin to see more when you're mindful of God. But we are only men, and we're not perfect. And we will fail many times. And I feel, when I've fallen from that grace. I didn't used to feel too much guilt because I was an asshole. I didn't used to feel too much guilt because I felt that it was not productive to feel guilt. I felt it was better to lose my emotions instead of embracing my spirituality. Because while I had heard of God, I did not recognize God. So, even though we're getting to Cosmics, is a person who believes himself righteous is capable of great evil in the name of his God. This is true. This is true. And this is why Jesus Christ is God. Because it is not me who believes myself to be righteous. I believe myself to be weak and fallible and unworthy. I do not deserve the many mercies of God. I do not deserve the gifts I enjoy. It is by the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, who, in the name of peace and of love, gave his life so that men like me could be forgiven. So your words are true. But the righteousness is not mine. It is of the Lord. Now, At one time I said emotions were weak. Now I will express them. I'll share them with you. So, if Israel's primary mechanism is subversion, and we've seen them bomb Syria with air power, they do not have the land forces required to hold the territory that would be Lebanon or all the way up into Iran. I believe that Israel has the idea or the notion, and they have stated as such, that they wanted to create an American, or not an American, a United States type model where they would have a confederation, so to speak, of Arab states, of Arab or Arab secular states, with Israel kind of acting as the DC of this confederation, to create a union under which Israel would be responsible for the security of that confederation. So, how did the Israelis benefit from blowing up Beirut? They can't hold it. But what does blowing up a port deny? It denies naval powers. So I believe whoever is responsible for this is examining their opportunity through projecting power by way of a land force, of a land army. Now, for all the New World Order bullshit we hear about the technocratic panopticon, there are a whole lot of people on planet Earth that don't use cell phones, that don't use electronics, and a lot of them are Muslim. Now, a long time ago, considering the speed of events that transpire today, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, I recall a man named Morris was in, I believe, Cambodia, perhaps, passing out cell phones to the villagers. And I believe he was Jewish and then converted to Islam. But this may or may not be true. At first, back then, I thought that he was handing out these cell phones to these villagers as sort of a forward intelligence gathering apparatus. You just give out free cell phones. I mean, remember the Obama phone, where everybody in the United States was supposed to get a cell phone? You know, like the technocracy, the digital dollar, the digital whatever, it's not going to work because there are so many people on this planet that simply either do not understand the technology, cannot afford the technology, will not replace the technology, will find replacements for it, and the New World Order basically castrates itself by pursuing a digital technology in order to control and rule. And this is a part that I will address in part 3 of what I intend to get to today through this AGR. But you'll find, I suppose as I find, when you connect the dots, it takes some time. And ultimately, I will demonstrate how the powers that be can get what they want. Let's see, thou mind of atheists, or the soul of the believer, that part is the same. To let him in, I welcome all as much I can. I'll have to reflect on that a moment. We know how to come close to God, but we don't know how to let him in. And each one of us, there is a part of him. Yes, this is true. In fact, I believe I wrote it in the description of this particular AGR. I think specifically it says, I don't know, something like to give, to have all is to give all. All is in the all. When to be the mind of the atheist or the soul of the believer, that part is the same. I don't know, because to be in the Holy Spirit, you have to surrender the ego. Now, far be it from me to tell you how to pray. And yes, it is correct, whether an atheist wants to recognize it or believe it or not, he does have a soul. So, I just find it a pity, a shame to live in a country like America where we have right there, number one, freedom of religion, to be able to worship as we wish, and yet people choose not to worship at all when every avenue of spirituality is open to you. It's not a theocracy. It's not like the friggin', it's not like Ferdinand and Isabella in Spain where, they would snatch you up and torture you. It's not like the Inquisition. It's not like the overreach of the Pope or the schisms of the English Church. In America, you have the freedom to find the path to spirituality, whatever way you choose. And I just find it a great waste not to pursue it. To pursue spirituality in any way that you can. So, but what you say is true. What you say is true. I cannot argue with that. Because I just can't. Because it's true. Can't argue with the truth. So, the Israelis do not have that ground power to hold an area like that, and it denies opportunity for naval powers. Now, what are naval powers? Naval powers are powers like the United States. We are a naval power. Russia is a naval power to a lesser extent. China is beginning to assert some naval power, but they have not, for whatever reason, recognized freedom of navigation, which we live on a water world. When you look at a map, you see a lot of land on it. Because the map that we often look at of the world maximizes the importance of land because this is what we study. It's because what we walk on and live on. But the most of this earth, 70% of it, is water. We live on a water world. And we believe that nobody, just like space, nobody owns space and nobody owns the seas. You have a certain allotment, off your coast. And then in some very unusual circumstances, that allotment grows. For example, like in America, on the Atlantic side, I think we have 7 miles until you're in international water. But when you're in the Gulf of Mexico, because of the geography of it, I think it extends something to like 15 or 17 miles before you're in international water. I could be incorrect about this, but it's something like that. So, any nation that wishes to exert naval power should do so responsibly, respecting the freedom of navigation that we have long decided. We decided that a long time ago. That's not an issue we're going to go to war over ever again. Because everybody in the world agrees on it. And if you're that one dipshit that doesn't agree on that, I think you're in for a fucking ride. It's not to say that, some jerk off in Washington can pull off a false flag and then say that China, attacked one of our carriers or something and sunk it in the South China Sea and we're going to war with China. Number one, the Chinese aren't that fucking dumb. They're just not that fucking dumb. Number two, what would they have to gain? They're a mercantile country that was not that long ago of the third world status. The Japanese would have fucked them to death had it not been for the intervention of America. And Russian-Chinese relations have always been at least cordial. The Russians have never really had problems with the Chinese because the Chinese never really had any designs on incursions into Russia. Like, China does not do incursions very well. They don't. They're far more concerned with, China's a big country and with a lot of different cultures in it, and they're surrounded by a lot of different cultures. It's not like America and Canada and even Mexico, how we're all kind of share a similar culture. And you would say, oh, well, Mexico is not, part of our culture. Canada's not really part of our culture. Well, they are. Even the geography of northern Mexico, until you get, even though it's kind of all desert, until you get to the mountains that there protect Mexico City. You can almost call that Mex America. It uses a lot of American money. If you get hit in Juarez, you go to an American hospital. Like, what they don't spend pesos down there, they spend dollars. We share a similar culture as far as our respect and love for family. We're Christians. Same thing with Puerto Rico or Guam. We share a culture. Same thing with Canada. Now, unfortunately, a lot of Americans have decided to choose that route where we undermine our own culture for whatever reason. It probably has something to do with those communists in the universities, the fascists in government that have helped to, at least present the idea that we've lost our way, but we have not. This would be the image that would be projected. I don't know why. But let's study Beirut a little bit more before we analyze the machinations of the communists that have fucked around in America for God knows whatever reason. It's like they'd kill the goose that laid the golden eggs. I cannot wrap my mind around it. They're either psychotic or just fucking dumb. I don't know. I really don't. Anyway, well, in Biden's case, it's senility. Applied Pelosi and Schumer. I'm not a fucking doctor, but I've seen enough old people around, kind of live in a retirement community, and I can kind of tell whether I got a sharp one of those ones where their bodies might be aged, but their mind is sharp, and I can tell some of them that are just fucking out to lunch. It's not that hard to recognize. I think we've all had a grandparent. So, anyway. So I'm curious. It's not a naval power that would do this. So it wouldn't be the United States that would blow up Beirut. Because we would have nothing to gain and everything to lose, because we're a naval power, and this would be where we would project force, and we would utilize that existing structure if we needed to in a conflict. It wouldn't be the Chinese because they're too far away. It wouldn't be Europe because, again, why? You're not going to run a pipeline through Lebanon. And Europe is capable of creating its own problems. I mean, Europe is, the greatest gift of Europe is its capacity to create problems for itself. It's singularly the greatest clusterfuck that's ever existed in all of human history, and considers and continues to be that, and will probably forever continue to be that. What in Europe? So, as we look at the New World Order, and I'm gonna just reach out on the very end of the branch of a twig of speculation, as the New World Order is a global institution, a globalist institution, you would have to think that some opposing force or forces to that global institution may not be within, let's just say, the sphere of awareness of the globalist ideology. As the globalists concentrate on consolidating power, they may ignore or not be aware of some other type of group, organization, force that would probably be of an organization of the caliphate. I would only guess that, but I would have no evidence to support it. It wouldn't be Iran, because, well, let's just look at Iran. I mean, who's, you have Iran-Contra, you had the Iranian hostage crisis. The Iranian hostage crisis, what was that? It was the hamstring a peanut farmer. So you had the Shah of Iran. So Iran is fully within, I wouldn't say that they're under control, but you can clearly see some level of cooperation in between Iran and the West. So, and maybe this is just to put a counterbalance to Israel. I mean, who really knows? That's the fucking beautiful part of Western intelligence operations, as an outsider looking at them. I mean, let's give them a little credit where credit's due. There's some clever friggin' people that have a long view. So, if I were to guess, when you use a thermobaric weapon, it's not like you have used a nuclear weapon that's going to, deny the territory later. I mean, it could be a demonstration of power. It could be to say that if you do not comply with the dictates of the New World Order, this is what is going to happen to you, and they make an example out of Beirut, or make an example out of the Twin Towers in New York. But I've already expressed my feelings on what happened on 9/11, and the facts of what happened is clear. And I've had too many men from my generation that I know personally that are good, honorable men that have fought in these wars. And well, I'm not like one of these guys that's like spits on my countrymen, spits on my soldiers, spits on my friends when they return home from war. The why is immaterial. They're Americans. They're home. That's all that matters to me. So could there be a power that lurks somewhere in the South that it would rely on a army that would have the capabilities of producing weapons with that level of destructive power? Is this a long play or an opening move? We simply do not have enough information. And nobody has claimed responsibility for it, which is what I find truly shocking. I had heard some rumors, just like, not even really rumors, it's just more of like a scenario. If you're like one of these think tank type of people, just, dream up different scenarios and shit. Like, what happens if you have, Iran enriches uranium, passes around 4 nuclear weapons, one's for Israel, one's for Europe, probably France, one's for DC, and then they blame it on China or some shit. None of that makes any sense. Like, it just, again, nobody benefits, and there's no real enemy you can point your finger at that's really going to coalesce nations that already don't trust their government. I mean, who would benefit from this would be like, if they blew up Washington, that pretty much takes out what, the fucking American political leadership and 30,000 National Guardsmen that they're using as body shields. Like, would that be it? I don't think Americans would find it shocking. I think that we would find it disgusting. It wouldn't coalesce us into some fight against an enemy. We would mourn the loss of wasted lives. There's no need for 30,000 soldiers to be in Washington, D.C. That, in and of itself, I find to be very suspicious. Nobody masses troops to have them blown up by one fucking bomb. Unless somebody knows something, and that's what they plan on doing. And again, then that would be an inside job, wouldn't it? They say globalists, like these shadowy globalists. Well, if you kill Americans on American soil, that's fucking treason. Plain and simple. So, and then you've got this incompetent political leadership in D.C. What's the point of blowing them up? They're weak. Why would you waste the power? Why would you have such an obscene display of force? And why would you use nuclear weapons when other weapons, like the one used in Beirut, are clearly just as effective? Everybody goes on and on about nuclear weapons. Well, I'm very pleased that the United States and Russia have once again, decided, hey, we're not going to go back onto a nuclear arms race. One, because it's environmentally it's a fucking disaster. Like, it's so expensive to do. With the weapons that exist today, building nuclear weapons is just a waste. I mean, it's kind of like, who's got the biggest dick? It's like, yeah, I'm gonna pull mine out, you pull yours out. Let's see who can come up with the next SAR bomb. You know, like, let's see how many megatons we can really get it up to. Maybe we'll blast our way through the firmament or something. Like, in the modern age, nuclear weapons, they have adjustable yields. They have tactical nuclear weapons. They have all kinds of shit. Like, and then the neutron bomb, this is, again, one thing that I never saw anybody claim any credit for. Maybe I'll be able to pull a clip. Maybe I won't. I probably archived it, but not on the computer here. Let's see if I can find it. It crackles like a firecracker. Neutron bomb. Now I would have to go back a long time to get this one. Get this footage. Let's see, maybe this is it. This one in Yemen. Yep. This'll do. I think this is it. Okay. Get ready for it. Now notice the sparkle.
Drone bombs.
And that's very different than the blast that we saw in Beirut. Okay, you got that electromagnetic sort of sparkle. You know, initially they claimed, the story was that a bomb hit an ammo dump and blew it up, but that's a neutron bomb. Yeah, that's a neutron bomb. But the neutron bomb is very different than that what I believe is a thermobaric weapon that was used in Beirut. Now that neutron bomb was deployed in Yemen. So you have to ask yourself, is somebody testing weapons? I mean, it wouldn't be the West. We've got shit like Indian reservations to blow up. Like when we do our weapons testing, you know, we do it out at White Sands. I mean, we blow up American Indians, and for the most part, you know, maybe we'll take over a chain of islands like Bimini or something, and you know, move the natives off and blow the islands up. Like weapons testing in the Middle East ain't our style. Like, we're still at war with the American Indians. Like, we want to test bombs, we're gonna fucking test them out near the Indian reservations. Let's just fucking be real here. So that's not our style. Somebody else. Something else is going on. Can't put my finger on it. I'm trying to connect the dots. And if I'm not to get my ass handed to me for having a couple of drinks today, I have got to get in there and cook a tofurkey. I thank you all for stopping in. I'll continue on maybe with parts 2 and 3 later. Maybe. I did get the Red Dead Redemption 2 strategy guide, so I don't know what's more important, preventing World War III or playing some fucking video games. I guess we all have to have balance in our lives. It's been